What is good, NIO family? It's Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's going on with the overall market and break down this falling wedge that's developing on NIO and talk about whether or not it's probable for NIO to try to bounce going into next week or not. I'll talk about some very important technicals for NIO and then break down what's happening with the overall market. But before I do anything like this, let me just mention a couple of things. I'm firstly not a financial planner, so make sure you take none of this as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Webull link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Webull, the link down below, and deposit any amount of money into the account, you are guaranteed up to 12 free stocks. The offer ends in just 4 days, so check it out before they run out. With that out of the way, let's get on with the video. All right, so NIO is down 2.64% for the day, once again coming down. And the question is, can NIO try to get a bounce from this level, or is NIO going to continue to sink? Well, one thing we could mention is that there's a bullish divergence on the 30 minutes time frame starting to develop. It's also developing on the 4-hour time frame, I believe, right about here. So with all these divergences and etc., like developing for the stock, it's actually not on the 4 hours, just on the 30 minute. But with all these divergences, it makes me suspect that there could be something coming, especially because we have this imbalance up here in like the 13s. And I just want to mention that as far as NIO goes from a technical standpoint, it is still looking a little bearish, right? It's continuing to downtrend right now, but we need to see some kind of balance very soon to trigger this change. You can see the MACD on the 4-hour time frame starting to curl a little bit as NIO is trying to find its bottom. There is a possibility of that. But for me to get confirmation of NIO actually bouncing, we have to see this break right over here. So it has this falling wedge that's been developing for over 8 days, been over a week. We are going to assume it's going to be in this wedge unless we get the breakout. That's what we're going to be watching for. And whether or not this happens is going to depend on a lot of different factors. One thing worth mentioning is that NIO continues to announce some bullish pieces of news. And NIO was due for a bit of a pullback after that very strong deliveries report that just came out. Now, on August 10th, NIO launched its 7th power swap station in Germany. That's some good news for them. Not to mention the fact that they have over 500,000 third-party chargers accessible to the European countries, which is still good news for them. And then to add on to this, I just want to mention that Deutsche Bank has come out and they're giving NIO a buy rating. So this is the first time we got some more bullish potential news. Deutsche Bank is saying that NIO has strong fundamentals. They also mentioned that their deliveries are expected to be much stronger for the second half of the year. And they're kind of like reiterating a lot of the points that these other analysts were saying, such as JP Morgan before. I think before we saw like Mizuho, I think it was JP Morgan that said this too in Citigroup. They were expecting a second strong half of the year. They said this back in June. And so far, it's been relatively strong seeing NIO's very strong deliveries. NIO is going to have some more numbers coming out for deliveries for August. So we're going to find out how those look very soon as well. But from a technical standpoint, it looks like this thing may get a bounce very soon. But we need to see if there's any confirmation for breakout. Now, the short interest has been dropping a little bit over the last couple of days. We're not seeing NIO being as heavily shorted as before. And then looking at the volume, it's not really dropping an extremely high volume. It's a little bit less than the average volume we've been getting. And then looking at the short volume relative to price, it's actually starting to drop. Short volume is dropping on NIO, which could be a bullish signal. I think it's going to be heavily dictated by the market and these external factors. But from a technical standpoint, the data is suggesting things are improving for the stock. So with this falling wedge developing, one thing you want to do is look at previous levels. Now, we actually broke a little bit below this resistance, which is now like support around this 12.8 area, just temporarily. And we had this breakout that formed, right? This breakout just about there, maybe very close to this level, like around 12.4. So I could see it dropping a little bit more and maintaining this trend for a little bit longer before this thing really starts to base. I could see it drop a little bit more. There is a possibility of that, or it could just break out from here. So we're going to be watching, where does NIO break out? Does it actually break out of the wedge immediately, or does NIO end up doing something differently? So what you want to be watching for would be the overall trend. We're also going to be watching to see other support levels. We have this trend line right here, which I could draw out. Let's just see how this looks. I actually haven't done this before, but you could draw out a trend line from here to here, like the previous levels. And then I know this is not like aligning that closely. This does suggest that there could be a little bit more downside if we do come down this low. So like I said before, there's something suggesting that there could be a little bit more downside for the stock. Looking at this trend line right here, it does look like support is still down there. But I am expecting this thing to bounce very soon, maybe as soon as next week. I still think it could happen. We might see something like this where NIO, drops down a little bit more, if anything, before it tries to continue going. So we might see something like this, where it gets one more little drop down to like 12.4, which happens to be where this breakout was, just about like this area right here. So we try to get down there, then we get one more bounce, and it finally breaks out like this, and we start pushing back into the 13s and make its way right back up going into next week. That could be one possibility. Or what could happen is we don't get the drop. What we might not get this drop. It just depends on this wedge, right? Where do we see this thing get the breakout? Where does this thing try to bounce? That's what we're going to be watching for, because there's a possibility that starting as soon as Monday, this thing might just start breaking out like this and then start making its way up to at least 13.5 plus into almost $14. This could happen as soon as Monday, but either way, I'm anticipating either it drops a little bit more, then we get some kind of bounce soon, or it just straight up bounces from here. Those seem very probable to me. Now, I'm going to talk more about SPY and how it relates to NIO in just a couple of minutes, because there's something big going on with SPY. But I want to talk about Tesla as well. When you look at Tesla, right, it's been respecting this falling wedge for quite some time, but Tesla is forming a divergence and it's trying to hold around this level. So the question I have is, could this be the formation of like an inverse head and shoulders like pattern where it's going to get a push up back up to these high levels? Is Tesla going to get a retest of this upper trend line, which I think is very probable? We could see this thing bounce and retest this before it comes down. But I'm going to be watching to see how this ends up playing out, because so far Tesla's trying to hold up and there is some signs of strength for it. Now, Tesla's going to depend heavily on the news, but for now, there's still some potential. And also for the triple Q, we have another like pretty large looking like falling wedge that's been developing. So we're going to be watching all these different falling wedges. The market should eventually get a breakout within the next 2 weeks, but we have to wait and see, because so far in the weekly, especially on the triple Q, is still looking a little bit weak. We will see if the bounce comes or not. We're about to get a bearish cross in the PPO, so it could come a little lower before it bounces, or it just bounces from here. That's a little hard to predict, but what I do want to mention is that we are approaching this previous uh, resistance, which is becoming support at this 366 level. So we'll see if this goes anywhere else. But I want to talk more about SPY tomorrow, because SPY has something very, very interesting developing, and SPY could have a big effect on NIO, believe it or not. I believe that it's going to be very important for tomorrow's video. That's why I want to focus a lot on SPY, because something big is developing on the charts. And until then, I just want the best for everyone, and just know that, yes, technicals currently look bearish for NIO, but I'm going to be anticipating a bounce eventually, because of how much it's dropped in such a short period of time, and because it's forming a bullish falling wedge and it's getting very close to a 4-hour crossover on the PPO. So a bounce should be coming soon. I am anticipating it, and we will see from there. I'm not really seeing a true. There is technically a bullish divergence on the 4-hour time frame, as NIO is very, very oversold. But on the 30-minute time frame, it is confirmed there is a bullish divergence right now. So we will see if this ends up playing out. It really depends on if we get the bounce and the breakout from the wedge for now. But I do believe there's a good chance of a bounce coming eventually, sometime next week. Uh, it may drop a little bit more first and then bounce, or just bounce from here. It's got to be one of those two. And that's what I'm leaning towards. So I will talk more about SPY tomorrow. I have something very interesting to announce about it, and then I'm going to talk about how that relates to NIO. So be on the lookout for that for tomorrow. And until I see you guys again, thank you all so much for listening. NIO to the moon, as the long term is still very bright, and peace out.